Hi, welcome back to this Thursday edition Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Invite you to call in and join our conversation about the topics we've been talking about today. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. You know, talking with Pete Greenwald, who's running against Eric Cantor in the Republican primary in Virginia's 7th District, talking about the spending issue and how we have spending out of control. We're borrowing something like 42 cents out of every dollar we spend. Number to call, by the way, is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. I like to take a lot of phone calls in this last half hour, so give us a buzz, talk about anything that's been in the news. We'll kind of start Free for All Friday a little bit early. Anything that's been in the news over this past week, we'd be glad to chat with you about. But Barbara Boxer, when it comes to spending, and you know, we get these empty promises from the Republicans. They say they're going to do something about spending, but then they never seem to get around to it. They've always got some excuse why they have to go ahead and increase spending. They will say, well, we're not going to do this because our real leverage is going to be when we get to the debt ceiling. That's when we can really make hay. Then the debt ceiling deadline comes and they fold. They roll over. Debt ceilings increase. Spending continues to grow. Now, at least with the Democrats, at least some of them are, we'll be honest with you. Here is Barbara Boxer. This is just an audio soundbite. She's talking here to people in the transportation industry, and the subject has to do with the gas tax and the fact that the highway fund that's used to build bridges and interstate highways and all that is beginning to be depleted, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to replenish it, how they're going to come up with another tax to put more money in that fund. But here is Barbara Boxer in a moment of revealing honesty.
I'm going to be very honest with you, although you probably asked me this. I don't see support for raising the gas tax, and there is absolutely no way we're going to cut spending. So it's going to have to be a creative way to fund this in reality.
So Barbara Boxer says, look, there is absolutely no way we are going to cut spending. So that's the Democrat speak. And now Ted Cruz, the number to call is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Ted Cruz spoke at CPAC this morning. You might have heard him on as Sandy Rios' guest this morning on her program. Heard a little soundbite on the news break at the top of the hour. Ted Cruz lining out 10 things that he believes represent a conservative platform that could bring real change to Washington. One of them was to abolish the IRS and replace the IRS code with a flat tax. I've been a supporter of a flat tax for a long time. Some people are supporters of a fair tax. That's fine with me. I'm a fan of the flat tax. Just get one flat tax. Everybody pays the same rate. No deductions. No anything. Let's just have everybody pay the same rate. Make it even right across the board. Flat tax. You know, and some people will say, well, we ought to have an allowance for charitable deductions. We ought to have an allowance for house. Well, if there's something we can all agree on, but I'm telling you, once you start making exceptions, then you got to make an exception for the next guy and the next guy that comes along after that. So anyway, if there's something that could be worked out, I think a flat tax would be the way to go. And this is just one of the number of options that Ted Cruz laid out, repealing every single word of Obamacare. And here's what he had to say at the close of his speech. This is clip one, Ted Cruz this morning at CPAC.
Now, there are lots of voices in Washington that will say, no, this is too bold. You can't stand against the IRS. That's extreme. You can't say repeal Obamacare. That's really a bit much. Let's just modify it. You can't not bankrupt the country. Let's just slow it down a little bit. A friend of mine suggested a bumper sticker slogan, Republicans, we waste less. You win elections by standing for principle and inspiring people that there is a better tomorrow.
So that's Ted Cruz. He's saying, look, there is a way to win, and it's not by rolling over. And he was very critical, harshly critical of the GOP. 2006, they didn't stand on principle. 2008, they ran John McCain. He mentioned him by name. 2012, they ran Mitt Romney, did not stand on principle. He says the 1 year where we had electoral success was in 2010, where we drew a line in the sand. And we ran strongly on principle position, didn't back down, didn't retreat, and we won a landslide victory. So Ted Cruz saying, look, this is the way forward, is by running on principle stand for conservative principles. Here is how he finished his speech, clip number 2. Let's listen.
I have never been more inspired than I am right now. I'm not inspired by Washington. I'm not inspired by the corruption. I'm not inspired by the mendacity in the White House. I am inspired because all across this country, the American people are waking up. All across this country, people are waking up and saying what we're doing is not working. People are hurting tragically, and we need to turn this country around. We did it in 1980 with a grassroots movement that became the Reagan Revolution, and let me tell you, the same thing is happening all over today. I am inspired, I am honored to stand with you today because together, if the American people continue to rise up, to speak out, to speak the truth, we will get back to the free market principles. We will get back to the constitutional liberties that have made America the greatest nation in the history of the world. We will bring back mourning in America. That's why we're here, and that is the future for the young and everybody else in this country. Thank you, and God bless you.
So there's Ted Cruz, a real strong message of principle, hope, optimism, sunny, cheerful, forward-looking, great message for the American public to hear. Now, the left will always tell you, this is clip number 7, Rob, the Chris Matthews clip. The left will always tell you who they're afraid of. They will always tell you who they're afraid of. Now, there's a lot of names that are being bandied about for 2016. Chris Christie got a rousing ovation at CPAC today. You've got Rand Paul in the mix, Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, other candidates that have their names in the hopper. The left will always tell you who they are the most afraid of by who they attack the hardest. Listen to Chris Matthews, and he will tell you right here who represents the single greatest danger to the liberal agenda in 2016.
Well, that's what I want to get to about. We'll get to the issue of social justice for a minute, but the personality of Cruz always amazes me. I can see the appeal of a Rand Paul. He's kind of a libertarian. I don't think he's a hater. He just sort of wants total, utter freedom because he read The Fountainhead 4,000 times and probably Atlas Shrugged 1,000,000 times, but he believes in it. Fine. Barry Goldwater was like that. He wasn't an evil guy. But Cruz looks like a guy that's out to get people. He votes against every nominee. He attacks Chuck Hagel's out defending our country there as some sort of a guy selling us out to the North Koreans. He makes these personal attacks on people's patriotism. There's something about him I really don't think is good for the country. He even looks and acts like Joe McCarthy. Why do people in Texas think he's the second coming of what? Joe McCarthy? Why do they like him?
So again, this tells you who they're really afraid of. He likes Rand Paul. Rand Paul is appealing. You got a lot of people in the media saying, hey, Rand Paul might be a guy to keep an eye on in the mainstream media, which means they feel that Rand Paul does not represent the kind of threat. And I'm not saying anything critical about Rand Paul here. Don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about the fact that you can tell who the mainstream media and who liberals are afraid of by who they attack. And they're not attacking Rand Paul anymore. They're not afraid of Rand Paul. They're not afraid of what Rand Paul is going to do to the liberal agenda, but Ted Cruz scares them right out of their socks. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to JT, Haleyville, Alabama. JT, welcome. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Brian. Great job.
Thank you.
This Cruz reminds me of another one. His name was Ronald Reagan.
Uh-huh.
Coming out saying the things that the nation is in trouble and saying the things that make the liberals shake, like you were just talking about with Chris Matthews. The same thing they done in 79 with Ronald Reagan. But I had pre-called about the gay agenda that they keep pushing on us, and as Christians, I've backed up as far as I'm going to back. I don't believe God put us here to be browbeat and to take these things lying down. We need to stand up against them and push back, let them know that we love them, but not the sin. And I'm just tired of our nation being injected and having to look like browbeat Christians. And we need to stand up this time and show the people of America what Christians really are. Thanks for your show.
Oh, that's a good call, JT, and I appreciate that. And Pete Greenwald, he mentioned that one of the things that inspired him was a memorial to the Big Red One at a chapel in Kansas when he was getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan, and the motto of the Big Red One, no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. And that may be the calling of Christians today. All right, thanks for the call, JT. Let's go to Brian in Montgomery, Texas. Brian, welcome. What's on your mind? Hey, Brian, welcome. What's on your mind?
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I've been listening a lot lately, like your show throughout the day, and I hear a lot of talk about how the gays seem to attack the Christians first financially, and then through the courts and things like that. And I got to thinking, we as Christians, if we could get organized to a point where, let's say they were to take a vow to turn their TVs off for, say, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, don't go to the movies, don't buy the movies, don't buy the magazines because of the that are linked to the news media that support the gay agendas. A lot, if you follow the money, to me it seems like they ultimately end up with our money because we buy all their products that they're all linked to, and then they ultimately turn around and use their money against us because these people can't they can't afford these high end attorneys. They have to be getting some financial help somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, if we could organize and say, in my house we turned the TV off 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I just got tired of seeing.
I think what I hear you saying, Brian, is one of the ways to make our voices heard is to make decisions that affect revenue that falls to their bottom line. I hear what you're saying. One of the ways to do that, turn off the television. This is what we've done on a selective basis here at AFA. Radio Shack closing 1,100 stores, and I'm not saying that we're primarily responsible for it or not. But one of the things we did, Brian, they were refusing to be Christmas friendly in their advertising, so we encourage people on our network to exercise their freedom of choice. Hey, if Radio Shack is going to choose not to honor Christmas, we can choose to buy Christmas presents for our children and our families somewhere else. People did. They had a horrible fourth quarter. And again, this is the responsibility of the Radio Shack Corporation, not our fault. Radio Shack corporate that did this, and they're going to have to close 1,100 stores. So hitting them in the wallet does work. Back in 2.